Obviously, from a technical perspective, a lot to follow on tonight. We're going to just highlight some of the things that are very unique and what makes Compuware the global leader in application performance management. So obviously, there's other questions. We'll follow up with you guys. Anything specific to your environments or your applications, that's what we're here for. But even though you saw this from a technical perspective, what we're really doing is solving a lot of business problems, right? The applications and just environments themselves are getting more complex. And as they're getting more complex, user demand, customer demand is trending along with that, right? People don't want information anymore in 5 minutes, they want it now. And that's the type of business problems, right? Companies today, to stay competitive, have to, they have to make sure that they live up to those demands to be able to stay competitive and be able to deliver the products and services they do for the consumers. So we are solving business problems. This is a business challenge that many global companies are having. So with that in mind, just learning a little bit of what Carl taught today, now Lance Sleeper from American Airlines can come in and talk to you about how he's applying this to the business challenges that they had, how he was able to solve those issues, and how he's now set up a continuous improvement type of approach in where he continues to use this to solve those business problems. So, Lance Sleeper.
Okay, so I got to pick on the sales guys just a little bit. Okay, so all of us in our IT, so we can all be honest with each other, right? How many of y'all have seen a presentation from a software company and they put this magic stuff up on the screen and they make it look wonderful? And then they come in and they sell it to you and then they run. And it doesn't quite do what it is up there. Hey, show of hands. That's okay, be honest. I've seen it.
Okay, whoever raises their hand's got to leave.
I work with some very large Fortune 500 IT companies that are represented by the color blue that have on occasion sold me things that didn't quite exist. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to ask you to pass judgment. I'm not going to ask you to believe what they said. I'm just going to simply share some of the stories and some of the things that we went through. Look, I want this to be interactive. My wife would tell you that they use my speeches to torture prisoners to get them to talk. So the more we interact, the better off we're probably going to be. I like quotes. So I work in operations. And in operations, everybody always has the best of intentions. And I have this quote up on the board in my office. Because the fact of the matter is we realize that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and we've already got 6 lanes in. We're working on number 7. And every time somebody comes to me with a tool and they're going to solve one of my problems, my first question that I ask them is, do you even know what problem of mine you want to solve? So we're going to roll back about 3 years ago into what we were dealing with from an IT perspective. So let's see if this sounds familiar. Your boss calls. There's a problem with the system. So the way we're going to deal with that problem is we're going to go get all of these really smart people who have better things to do. We're going to lock them in a conference room, and we're going to do this kind of digital pin the tail on the donkey to try and find the problem. And about 12 hours in and about 9 pots of coffee and 2 pizzas later, somebody says, I remember 3 years ago that we had this problem that we may have fixed, and you have this magic moment where and everybody's exhausted and tired, and you fix it, and you come back the next day and there's a new problem. And you go right back to the conference room. We were at that spot and we were burning lots of time and lots of money, and we reached the point where we finally went to our managing director, who was not a big tools guy, and we said, Daniel, look, we have to have a solution. We can't keep doing this. We were spending so much time triaging problems that we're not writing the new features that our customer and our business needs, and we're starting to get a bad reputation. So we embarked upon our quest. We had 2 vendors in-house with whom we already had relationships. I'm not going to mention their names here because I'm not going to badmouth people. We'll simply call them Vendor 1 and Vendor 2. Vendor 1 is a leader in IT. Big company. We had their solution in a very small part of the company, so it was already established, so we already had an agreement, so we didn't have to deal with the paperwork problems. They came in, and for 3 weeks, with the people who wrote the code for the tool, 3 weeks, they couldn't get it to install. So they got kicked out. So we went to the leader at the time in application management, application performance management. We went to the leader and we said, we need you to come help us solve this problem. They brought their tool in, install, we bring it up, environment crashes. Install it, bring it up, environment crashes. I'm not going to recommend that we put something in place that causes the environment to crash. I have developers that do that. I don't need a vendor that does that as well. We finally turned all of the instrumentation off, got the tool to come up running 30% overhead in our production environment. 30%. It took 30, anybody have 30% spare CPU just lying around you don't need? No, neither did I. Especially not for a multi-million-dollar tool. No, they were pricey. They were really proud of their stuff. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I'm in the wrong business. If I can sell software that doesn't work and make that kind of money, I'm in good shape. So then we bring in Dynatrace. At the time, Dynatrace is relatively an upstart in the industry, and there's a guy by the name of Chuck Miller. Chuck came in and sat with us, and of course they had their fancy presentation, and it's had some of the pictures that y'all saw, and Chuck stood up, and Chuck's a no-nonsense guy. He's a tech guy. So, we talk nuts and bolts together. And Chuck said, look, here's the deal. We're going to install it in a day. We will have a problem solved by day 2. And I was like, okay. And I started laughing. He said, what's funny? I said, you got stones to come in here and say that you can do that. I said, you got some guts. And he said, we'll do it. I said, you'll be the first. So they came in. 2 hours into the deal, they had it up in our staging environment. 2 hours. Not 2 days, not 2 weeks, 2 hours. So Chuck said, what problem do you want me to solve? And I'm sitting there thinking, we may not buy anything. They're going to solve one of my production issues that I'm tired of dealing with. We had a problem with a DB2 driver, turns out. So we have a major enterprise e-commerce site. Fair enough? Roughly 30 million visits a day, 300 pages served, 1.6 million visitors, unique visitors every day. We drive some traffic. And every time our legacy loyalty, DB2 database, this is something that had been around since Moses was a small child. And the programmers who wrote it are long since gone. Every time they took it down for maintenance, the site would go down. How would y'all like to explain to a CIO that your e-commerce site is going down because a non-related legacy database was going down? That's not a fun conversation, especially every month. And so I told Chuck, I said, you know what? This is the problem. If you want to prove to me that you have value, you're going to solve this. Because they weren't going to solve it. About 15 minutes into the troubleshooting, he said, here's your problem. The driver is ignoring the timeout value. He's causing your queues to fill up. Here are the queues. Here's the problem. Here's the error. Well, that's kind of cool. He's like, okay, we got a day and a half left. What do you want to do? Well, let's solve this one. I used all 3 days. I used it valuably. But the fact of the matter is, that DB2 driver problem, we had burned 600 effort hours on that problem. 600. Not to mention the time down. Not to mention all of the workarounds that we had to do. 600 hours of people who are highly intelligent and need to be doing things better than troubleshooting a software company's problem. It took us 3 conversations with them. The third conversation, Chuck actually took the Dynatrace picture in Paint, Microsoft Paint, drew a circle around it, put an arrow there, and said, problem. They sent us an email back, said, we don't think this is our problem, but here's a file we think will address it. And it said DB2 bug fix. So I was satisfied. And that began the beginning of a very long relationship. So to speak to a couple of things they did talk about, we run it in systems 24/7, 365. Runs all the time. Runs on all of our major e-commerce systems, it runs on everything that we have. Our overhead is 1.5% on our CPU, and you can't tell on memory. It's negligible. Runs all the time. We push their systems to the absolute edge. And they perform like a champ. It's awesome. So we're going to get into some of the success factors around APM, but one of the things that I want to encourage y'all to do, don't wait until our software is 12 years old, 12-year-old code base, has about 500,000 lines of code. And I think the polite way to say it is it's grown organically. I think that's the IT solution for we just threw things together and they just kind of work. Don't wait until you have a 12-year-old code base that has grown organically. Build it in at the beginning. One of the things that we're finding now is for our new software, when we build it in the beginning, the benefits are exponential. And I'm talking about APM. Let's leave the tool selection out of it because I'm not going to tell you how to drive your tool selection. I'll tell you what we did. I'll tell you how it worked. I'll answer questions on it. One of the things that y'all are going to find is I'm going to be honest whether they're here or not. Because I have my integrity and the integrity of American to protect. So if there's things about them that frustrate me, I'll tell you. If there's things they do real well, I'll tell you that too. But what I can tell you is regardless, you need to focus on APM as a part of your code now. Don't make the mistakes that we made. Wait 10 years. You have a mess where you're locking people in rooms, especially if you're writing new code. Make this a part of who you are and what you do. And let me tell you why. So do I have any numbers people in here? Like managers who don't really do anything like me? I'm a manager, I don't do anything. I have some really good people though. How does 80% less time spending triaging problems out?
Really, really,
60%,
really good.
60% less time on mean time to resolution. It is
That's,
huge.
and it sounds like that means you'd get real work done.
Yes.
Stuff delivered.
And it changes the conversation. And the conversations are great. Anybody here working a multi-department setup where there's 3 or 4 people that have to talk when there's a problem? It looks like this, right? It's your code. No, it's not. It's the hardware. And then the network guy's not in the room, so you say, no, it's network. The Dynatrace tool set fundamentally changed for us our conversation because it was very finger pointing and very adversarial, and it caused silos to build up in the company unnaturally because everybody was protecting turf. What happened when we put our APM solution in place is all of a sudden the conversation changed because everybody was singing off the same sheet of music. All of our e-commerce solutions use the APM solution provided by Compuware. And so now what it is somebody will be in the tool and they say, hey, we're seeing something that doesn't look right in your software because everything's interconnected. It's all woven in. There's a big map and it's nice and it'll show when you start having delays. And now the conversation is, hey, I'll pull mine up too and let's talk and let's figure out what it is. Because very seldom is there a problem that is related to one piece of software. Typically it's an interaction. And it's changed our conversations, and now what we have is we have a very collaborative discussion around what's going on, and we're solving things more quickly because we don't have people trying to prove it's not them. What we have is we have people looking at the same data and trying to identify the problem, not worrying about where the blame is set. So what I would tell you is from an American Airlines perspective, from my perspective, I'm spending less on break-fix maintenance, number one. I have a team of about 26 people. It used to be most of those people were dedicated to break-fix. This year I will actually drop below to about 1/3 that are on break-fix. Everybody else will be dedicated to perfective work, so making things better. We went through a conversion from IBM WebSphere to TC Server. Our conversion to WebSphere from, what was it? I'll call it in a minute, it's irrelevant, but it took about 2 years. Our conversion to TC Server took about 6 months. We tuned garbage collection in production with Dynatrace. Because the load testing will only take you so far. If you've got the data in production, we were able to roll in, we bled over transactions, we actually split our cluster, and we were able to look and do a before and after, and we did that with Dynatrace. We parallel processed and looked at it, and we were able to tune garbage collection on the fly. 50% reduction in footprint because of the TC Server rollout. We were able to realize it faster because of an APM solution. We also use the UEM functionality, which is the really cool map. And the map is really great when you run a website because you can then see all of your clients. If you're running a distributed client system, if you're dealing with call centers that are geolocated globally. Those are the other things that will help you understand where your problem spots are so you can effectively deal with them versus playing pin the tail on the donkey. It's more like needle in a haystack, but you have a magnet. And it's a really awesome solution. So just some ideas on best ways to do it. Number one, never lose the opportunity to leverage a good crisis. So the accountants are going to fight you on this. They're not going to understand. In fact, the first time we took it before our board of directors to do it, because when we did it for the corporation. And the board of directors initially rejected it. We had a major crisis, and I called the CIO the day after, and I said, how expensive does the software look now? Crises are wonderful selling tools because you can say this would have solved the problem and here's why. The second thing you've got to do is you've got to remember, and this is a Texas thing, so I made sure that it would translate. You can lead a horse to water. You can stick the horse's nose under the water. The horse is going to choose to drink or drown. Don't give people a choice as to whether or not to use the tool. The tool needs to be a part of your culture. You know, is it optional? No, it's not optional. Testing's not optional. Unit tests aren't optional. Breathing is not optional. You need to make this a part of your culture. And as it becomes a part of the culture, it simply becomes a part of what you do. There is a learning curve. It is a change in behavior. It is a change in thought process. That's okay. Get your technical people involved early, but do not give them a choice. Make it a part of who you are. You need to remember that when you turn these tools on, that you will know more, you will have more knowledge about your software. That does not mean you're going to be happier. You're going to have a lot of moments like, it's not supposed to do that. I think I heard somebody talking about Hibernate. We had a situation with one of our maintenance and engineering packages where we were instantiating Hibernate 75,000 times for every one time it was called. And that doesn't work very well that long. The operational procedure on that was they just restarted it every night. 2 years they did that until we brought the Dynatrace package in, and it only took them 5 minutes to figure that out. It's amazing. And then finally, I would encourage you that regardless of what you do from a package perspective, one of the lessons we learned as an American, we had two groups of people. We had a group of people who believed, you know what? I don't know this is not a part of my job, I'm going to bring a professional in, they're going to teach me how to use it right. And so the way that Compuware did our training, the way they do all their training, is they train you on your stuff. It's not a hello world system, it's a, we're going to teach you how to instrument applications, by the way, we're doing it on your application. So it took us a week to get everything, all the instrumentation, everything we wanted set up. The groups that did it on their own really struggled. The groups that went ahead and brought Compuware in as a partner to do the training, they moved. And it became an integral part of what they do. It became a part of their monitoring, it became a part of their documentation, it became part of everything they did. So don't embrace that whole DIY thing. You know, you've heard an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I go one step further. A pound of cure is worth a ton of headaches. I would just as soon never have a conversation with my CIO. I haven't reached that point yet, but I'm working on it. It's nice to not say everybody's in a war room trying to figure things out. It's nice to say, because now our CIO, her first question is, what does Dynatrace say? We have a problem, what does Dynatrace say? And the groups, God forbid there's a group that is yet to implement or adopt it, because immediately I get a call from that manager the following day and said, Maya said I had to use Dynatrace. It's like, I'm here to help. And I've been bugging him for weeks or months or years or whoever it is. That call from the CIO really kind of helps to grease the skids. And you have to understand, not everybody's going to come along. Your development community may balk at this initially because I have developers who love to write code. They don't like to write, they don't like to design software. They like to put Java on paper and make it look pretty and make it do all these weird things. And pretty soon, are y'all familiar with the Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons? Yeah. You know the machines that the Roadrunner builds where the cannonball rolls down and hits the chicken and the chicken lays an egg? And that's what our code looks like. Except a little bit more complicated. That's what developers do. They like building things that are complex. These tools will drive your developers to write simple, clean, efficient code. That's not fun. But it's a lot more fun than being locked in a conference room. So, how do you go through this? How do you start or embark on this process? The first thing I'm going to tell you is find your captain, find your champion, find the person who's the technical influencer in your organization who believes in this. That or find the one who's the most tired of being locked in a room. Either one works.